After 16 years of operating a constitution, especially since both the major political parties in our country have had an opportunity to work it, there are several matters that have come up for discussion. And my way forward is that those issues will put a constitutional review commission in place very soon after taking office to go around the country collecting the views of our people to see how strong is this demand for reform. There are matters that all of us know about. Ministers in Parliament, should they come from Parliament? The powers of the Attorney General, should they be separated? The issue as to whether or not we should have a Prime Minister rather than a Vice President, like many of our neighbors do. The term of the President has come up. Is 4 years the ideal term for us, or are we talking 5 years? We've got the question of the election of district chief executives. Is that something that we want to see, or we want to have them appointed? These are some of the issues. We're talking, for instance, also about the creation of regions. We have at the moment very stringent provisions for creating more regions. Should we have looser provisions? I think these are the matters that the Constitutional Review Commission will take before our people. And if the answer is in the affirmative, that yes, there is a widespread demand out there, then to initiate the processes in the Constitution for amending the Constitution.
Indeed, any president appoints more than 5,000 officers into public office. We are still counting. Certainly, Professor Chairman, is a monarch that the Constitution has created. The rest of us citizens hold him in awe, and even when he strays, it is difficult to talk straight to him. This arrangement needs to be revisited. It cannot be good for our growth. It cannot be good for the growth of democracy. The country needs a head of state and government. Therefore, agreeably and understandably, at any given time, we shall have a president or prime minister. However, there is an empirical study conducted by the World Bank which suggests that small unitary countries are better served with prime ministers as heads of state other than presidents. A president has the whole country as his constituency, whereas a prime minister operates from his or her own small cell. When the parliamentary leader wins and his party wins majority of seats in parliament, he becomes the prime minister. His campaign purse is small as compared to the president's campaign wardrobe. Of late, electioneering campaign funds of contestants at every level of political arrangements has been escalating. The campaign funds of parliamentary candidates from primaries to national elections is averaging $600,000. $600,000. That is according to the research conducted by CDD in respect of the events culminating in the 2020 elections. $600,000. If we are converting it to cedis now, it will be 4.8 million Ghana cedis to elect a member of parliament into office. Now, if you elect such a person into office, he or she is not a Father Christmas. You make him a minister, what do you think will happen? And as a nation, we turn around, we say we want to combat corruption. How do you combat corruption when we do this to ourselves? Mr. Chairman, that amount is huge. We are yet to begin the counting of notes in the lead up to the 2024 elections. The campaign pairs of a presidential candidate from party primaries to the national elections, by any proper reckoning and accounting, cannot be less than the equivalent of 50 million United States dollars. How much does that translate to? 50 million. Over 400 million. Where do the candidates have the monies from? There is a nexus between huge campaign expenditure and corruption through the award of contracts. What therefore should be our preference pursuant to good governance? As a nation, we must confront this. Do we need this expensive structure of government in the president, or a much lesser evil in the form of a prime minister who is as well much more accessible and accountable to the representatives of the people? We have a choice.
The Majority Leader of Same Che delivering a lecture on the need for the review of the Constitution. He came up with ideas that people say will go to such a drastic review of the Constitution. And earlier you heard the President when he was at the IEA platform ahead of his first term when he won the elections, talking about the fact that when he came into power, if he came into power, he would check the views of Ghanaians and then set up a process to begin the review process. Well, before that, we had already done a constitution review headed by Professor, how am I forgetting his name? Albert Fiajo led Constitution Review Commission, who produced this 1,000-page document for us. It is said to be the biggest, arguably the biggest socio-political data that this country has ever gathered in respect of these matters. Now that the two contenders for the election 2024 are known, this constitution issue will be a major issue that both of them will face, and they all admit that there's a need for some constitutional amendment. John Mahama has hinted at certain portions of the constitution, including ex gratia and the rest of them, that he will focus on. Bawumia admits that the group that held the major protest of the year have genuine concerns, and that will be attended to. The biggest motivation for the demonstration, as preached by the organizers, has been an overhaul of the Constitution. Did you know that there is already a Constitution Review Consultative Committee in place by the government under the aegis of the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs? Now, get to meet them and let's hear what they are doing, whether what they are doing is something we can buy into, and what support we can give if we have to. In the meantime, the last time we discussed the Constitution Review, I gave you some constitutions. If you're driving, this way in front of Joy FM, just drop in and ask for a copy. This time, very limited. So come by and pick a copy of the Constitution and read Article 41(2) for yourself and be collectively responsible for what is happening to the country. So, first, chairperson of the CRCC, Clara Berry Kasati, who is also with the CDD. So, how did we come by this committee in the first place?
Well, in my own case, the first time I heard about the committee was when my dean sent me a WhatsApp message and said that the Majority Leader, through the auspices of the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, is setting up this committee that will have institutional representation. And then he said the University of Ghana School of Law is one of the institutions that would be part of this committee. And then he said, Clara, I'm not asking you whether you want to go or not. I'm saying you are going. And didn't give me an opportunity to respond to whether or not, but yes. So yes, the first time I got to know about it was when Professor Raymond Atuguba sent me that WhatsApp message and said, from the School of God, you will represent the University of Ghana School of Law on this committee.
Prof is not known to be autocratic. So what is going on? All right,
so yes. So here I am on. That's the first time I got on the committee. Then of course the communication started, and then at the end of the day we have 12 institutions. So we have the University of Ghana School of Law, we have the NCCE, we have ACET, we have the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs. We have the National Media Commission, we have the judiciary, we have the audit service, we have the Ghana Bar Association, and we have the Ministry of Justice and Attorney General's Department. We have SHRAJ, we have the NDPC, the National Development Planning Commission, and then we have the Parliamentary Service. So what happened was that all of these institutions freely decided who they wanted to represent them on the committee, and they sent the person on the committee.
Right.
So the majority leader inaugurated the committee, and then the committee had its first meeting, and then the committee elected me as its chair for this job. So the committee is non-partisan, because as I noted, it's institutional representation. Yes. Okay. It is also independent. Since we've started work, nobody has given us instructions.
The institutions again are the University of Ghana School of Law, the NCCE, the Africa Center for ASEP, the MOPA, that's the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, NMC, Judiciary, Audit Service, the GBA, this is Ministry of Justice and Attorney General, the SHRAJ, the NDPC, very important, and Parliamentary Service. Thank you. Please go on.
Yes. So yes, and consultative. So people made submissions to the committee on what they want to look at since at least after the CRC report. So we've considered these submissions, and the way the committee operates is by consensus. So we consider the submissions, look at the recommendation of the CRC report, look at what has been overtaken by events, or is there a more efficient way of doing things. So in short, we all agree that it's been 40 years since we've been operating the 1992 Constitution. So what we did was to do a clause by clause consideration of the committees, the Constitution. And then the interesting thing you realize is that there are some of the things that we complain about, but when you actually go to the text of the Constitution, you realize that the solution we are prescribing is actually what is in there already. And yet it is just the way we have operationalized it that is the problem. But there were certainly some of them that required for us that requires a review of the text of the material.
So you say that you received inputs.
Yes.
Which you have reviewed and you are incorporating into what you are doing. What we know, for example, about the CRC, the Constitution Review Commission that was set up in 2010, was that they did, a nationwide process and received submissions from all sorts of places. They went to chief justices, former chief justices. They went to presidents, former presidents. They also held, consultations and so on. Even went beyond the country to, consult with Ghanaians abroad, and eventually brought the 100,000-page document, and they gave us 41 entrenched provisions that needed to be amended, and then 57 non-entrenched provisions. When you say you received inputs that you are working with, how did you go about that? So
the report, our first document is a report. What did the CRC report recommend?
Okay.
Now, after, it's been, I think that the report was in 2011.
That's correct.
So that's been more than 10 years since the report was made. So obviously some of the things would have been taken by events. So some people have made proposals post the CRC report. So what we do is we look at the proposals they've submitted, we look at what is in the CRC, what the CRC recommended, and then we decide whether or not the text is fine as it is, or the recommendation from the CRC report should be maintained, okay, or whether there's a new suggestion that comes forward. So for example, if you look at the solution that the CRC report recommended for Article 71, for example, was to set up an emoluments commission. And then, of course, then it would do the determination. So we came up with a proposal, including submissions we've received, that rather than create another body, just leave the committee, just that this time, rather than do it every year, the committee comes up with a formula, and that is it. So once you have a formula, You now input the ingredients into the formula. It will tell you how much, just like the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission has a formula for public sector workers and all of that. So what the committee should be doing should be a one-term formula. Maybe periodically like 10 years, you want to look at the formula again, fine. But we should be dealing with a formula rather than setting up committees that we have to pay and have to think of salaries and all of that.
Okay.
So you see that this is something that would have been overtaken by events, because, you know, even after this, we also had the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. It's worked up to some time. Let's strengthen our institutions. So let's see what institutions we can bring. TUC, Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, Audit Service, again, institutions come together, determine a formula, and we use it. We have the petroleum formula, for example, so we don't have to each time go back and then set up a committee to decide petroleum pricing. We use a formula. So let's do a similar thing for the formula. So in short, what this committee does is to look at the proposals and submission post the CRC.
And this sounds a more progressive approach. Instead of setting up an emoluments commission that will be paying,
exactly, will pay salaries.
The appointment to who should become there will become another fight.
And secretariat.
We should just have one formula set up, and that's it. Either we amend it from time to time.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's it. And
so that a president doesn't come and then before they are exiting office, they set up an emoluments committee.
Exactly.
They determine their, benefits.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Something. So something like. So this is a very rich document, and that we are working with. And like we said, we are looking at post the CRC. The other issue that we have to consider is that, look, when the 1992 Constitution was being passed, it came as a whole document. So it was presented at a referendum. You did not have the opportunity to say, I like Articles 1 to 20, I don't like Article 15, I don't like Article 16. You either took the whole document or you leave it. That's how we came by the 1992 Constitution. And like we all agree, constitutions are living documents. Along the line, as a people, we might outgrow certain aspects. So the Constitution itself provided room for amendment. The other thing we have to realize is that it is not possible under the Constitution that we have. We have amendment procedures. We cannot take an entire document like this again and go back for a referendum and say, take it or leave it, because I might like some of the recommendations, I might not like the other recommendations. The nature of the Constitution, what the Constitution itself has provided is that I should determine that before any I is dotted on the Constitution, or before any word is taken out of the Constitution, it should be clear. So if it is entrenched, the provisions are clear that it has to go to a referendum. If it is not entrenched, of course, Parliament can deal with that. So for the entrenched clauses, if we are going to go for a referendum and we really want to have practice democratic values, the people should be able to understand every amendment we are asking them of. This is not going to be possible if you lump 56 amendments together, or even 15 or 10 amendments together and tell the people that vote, because the people have to vote on each one of them.
That's right.
So what this committee will do is, after we've now, of course, done the consultations, because as the name suggests, it's consultative, and agreed finally on the recommendations that we want, we also provide a roadmap. That one, we categorize them. These are the entrenched, these are the ones that fall within entrenched provisions. These are the non-entrenched provisions. So that the non-entrenched provisions, Parliament can see, and we can even recommend. Parliament, we think these are the ones that if you start with, they can make profound changes. With the ones for referendum, similar. We can't take all the amendments to referendum at the same time. We should have a roadmap, and the roadmap should include which ones we can start with. One first will be how many should we go with at a time.
Just hold on, these are the members. So you see Clara first, Ms. Anthony Forson, Junior member, Yabwe Duayebuafo member, Dr. Kojo Esiem, Mensa Abrampa member, Mr. Dixon Chinebua Kodia. Then you have Mrs. Mercy Labi, a member, Mr. John Nwoza, who joins us now, Mr. Victor Brobe, Professor John Asafuaje, Justice Yoni Kolendi, that will be representing the judiciary, Mr. Alfred Chiayeboa, representing Attorney General, Minister of Justice, and Nana Tewia Ochre will be representing Parliament or Parliamentary Service. Right. Okay. So those are the members. We're just showing you. You can follow us now. Please go on.
Yes. So the guiding principles, for example, of this committee is, first of all, if you make a submission, does it belong in a constitution? I always say that constitutions are not manuals. Mm-hmm. So we have to have an understanding of what a constitution is and whether what we want to see belongs in a constitution or it belongs in an act, a regulation, or a political party constitution. Then if it belongs in the constitution, does the current provision achieve that effect? If the current provision doesn't achieve that effect, is it consistent with the clear values of the Constitution? And then, of course, we look at efficiency and all of that. So what this committee is doing is putting together everything post the CRC. And like I said, starting with the recommendations of the CRC, looking at where we are after the CRC, with the sole objective being that we want to come out at the end of the day with recommendations for a report that will show us where we are 12 years since the CRC report, where we want to be in our democratic journey, and recommend a constitutional framework that puts us in a position to pursue the Ghanaian aspiration for democracy. That is what constitutions can do. And as I've said in public fora all the time, constitutions don't have legs. They don't have arms. They can give you a tool to work with, guaranteeing respect for everybody, and then the rest of it has to be done with various institutions, right, including all of us.
First thing, we are just sharing with our audience your mandate clearly stated in there. But you say that you are not supposed to redo or undo what the Constitution Review Commission did. So you are still getting new input into that. You'll be undoing some of it, just like we have just been shown. The Emoluments Commission that was proposed, you are undoing it.
Yes, it's, it's semantics.
Right.
Some will say it's a review of it because it's maintained, but it is reviewed. But even before I go to your comments, Samson, I have a preliminary point that I would want to forcefully state.
Please go ahead.
That is the topic for today. Propping up a failing democracy. I have serious objections to it. I do not think our democracy is failing. We as a people are failing. There are deep cracks within the system, deep divisions as to political affiliation, etc., leading to cultures of silence. But the democracy itself is not failing. Look, as we sit now, people are looking up with relish to the 2024 elections. Not so. Mm-hmm. The Electoral Commission of Ghana has conducted successful elections from 1992 with all its modifications up till now. Indeed, there's a section of people in Ghana who believe that the current administration has done so well that it should break the 8. There's another section which believes that the government has not done enough and must be changed. So I think that the fundamentals are there, that we all wish to continue in this political light. And I agree with His Excellency the President in the first tape that came up, that we've practiced all forms of systems, and we believe that democracy with all its flaws is the best way to go. So I do not think that the democracy is failing. No. So it's a point I want to make as to your choice of topic today.
We're speaking to the data and the survey, Safro Barometer and the rest of them.
Correct.
Trust in public institutions is at the worst ever. Christopher Nyanevi and Richard Fosu of Monash University, Melbourne, have recorded in a recent academic publication that they did. And we shared this, myself and Mami, the last time we did a discussion on it, that the pride and euphoria that greeted independence from colonial rule in the late 1950s through the 1960s was short-lived, and many African countries plunged into decades of political instability, socioeconomic stagnation and crisis, and even civil wars. The causes included lack of democratic participation and peaceful transfer of power. Now, if we recall the rebel movements and the bloody coups of the 80 successful ones, there have been 80 successful coups, 108 failed coup attempts, and 139 plots in sub-Saharan Africa alone between 1956 and 2001. Last year, there was a wave of coups, and it is predicted that this will continue. The general cry that citizens are not happy because the dividends of democracy have not been delivered makes constitution review an imperative. This is the fact with the people, that the democracies are failing.
I still disagree.
Okay.
It is not the democracy which is failing. It is the people themselves who are failing. And the people means from the child in the class 5 elections up to the top. India has the biggest democracy, hasn't it? Has there been a coup there? Never.
By Chairman's verdict, as we just heard,
Yes.
the democracy is failing.
Well, that is Chairman's verdict.
We have a monarch, not a president.
That is Chairman's verdict, and he's entirely entitled to it. Very brilliant man.
All right.
But I disagree. And that is the fundamental law which says that he has the right to freedom of conscience, thought, and belief. That's what he believes.
Right.
I disagree.
Okay.
I think that our democracy is on track. The institutions are failing. The people are failing the institutions. The people are failing to hold the leaders accountable. But as the president said, it is the best form with all its flaws, and I agree. So let's move from that premise that, look, it will get better. I would ask you that if you listen to Daddy Lumba's latest song, he said that no matter what happens, even before your dying day, you wear the crown. So let us have the hope and work towards that hope. If you look at the preamble of the Constitution, it is all there.
Right.
So let us work, with positivity rather than the negativity.
Right. So now we have been introduced to the committee, the composition of the committee, and we are looking at the ways you are working, and we are told about how you are working in consensus.
Yes.
And how you vote on contested areas
Yes.
if there are.
Yes.
So what have you been able to do over this period?
Yes, as Clara indicated, and before I even proceed, I have been blessed by my country because I happen to be the youngest member of the Consultative Assembly,
Yes.
which put this constitution together. So I have the institutional
Justice
memory.
Brobe
Yes, was
told
there.
us about that
Yes.
at Legon
Yes.
last week.
Okay, yes.
He mentioned that you were the youngest
I was the youngest, actually.
in that committee.
So we
the
had-
committee that brought up the 1992 Constitution.
Yes.
He was there.
I was the youngest. So with Osafo Mafo and Otu Sribo and all those people. So I have all the institutional memory. Right. So I remember plenty of the things that went into the thinking. So when we take it clause by clause, and I'll be honest, I missed only one sitting of that Consultative Assembly because when I was unmarried, I was not a lawyer. So I attended every meeting except one when I went to the hospital. Okay. So I remember every clause and sometimes even the people who made presentations. So when we take it clause by clause, because I have that link between what actually went in and the new thinking with the committee, it actually facilitates.
Let me ask you about this comparatively.
Yes.
From what we heard from Justice Brobe and Justice Amono Money,
yes,
who were all part of that committee.
Yes.
In fact, they shared their lived experience with the situation with us, and it was so refreshing. That consultative committee was huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yours is rather small.
Yes.
There were the market women.
Yes.
And all of those other people, fishmongers and all the
right.
rest. You guys are institutions represented by the institution's bests.
Yes, let me explain. That huge committee, Consultative Assembly, produced the Constitution. Then we move from there to the CRC, which has a 1,000-page document. So we are distilling the findings of the CRC with the CRCC. So there's a wealth of knowledge available with all what Chairman Sabonsu has said, what other findings have been. So we are distilling and trying to get the perfect document to help us as to fund attending.
So you don't necessarily need that kind of organization.
We don't. The Constitution is a living document. So having lived it up to this point, we see where we have fallen short and try to perfect it.
Right.
Yes.
And we'll do consultations as well. So once we finalize, before we finalize and come out with our final report, we would have presented the findings and the recommendations to people to provide their inputs.
Right.
Yes.
Before we bring others to join us to discuss what you are doing, you have already taken us to some of the recommended proposals that you are looking at. And I'm hoping that through this platform, we can get you feedback.
Yes.
Clara just spoke about the emoluments, commission that was proposed, and you appear to bring a superior, approach to it. Then there is NDPC Article 71 office holders, whether there should be a cap on the ministers, president paying tax or not paying tax, there should be a cap on constituencies. It's an issue that is invoked now.
In fact, interestingly,
what are you guys saying?
We are even talking about removal of all deputy ministers.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
What's the basis for that suggestion?
We are cutting down the size of government.
So we cap the ministers. Our recommendation is to cap ministers at 25.
25.
Not more than 25. Ghana doesn't need more than 25 ministers to run.
Interesting.
Revolutionary.
25 ministers.
Yes.
No
deputy ministers.
No deputies.
And it's capped.
Yes.
It's not in a situation like where Akufo-Addo, surprised all of us. 126 ministers.
25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And constituencies too should be capped. Now we have already have
275 with the possibility of 276 with SAL.
Exactly.
Yes. And there has been a debate that we have known for a long while now that people were actually lacing their boots for a total of 25 new constituencies to be created.
The EC has come out to say that
yes, I get it.
Only one.
Yes, I get it. Yeah. You are saying it should be capped.
It should be capped. We don't need more than 277 constituencies.
So for Parliament, you are not asking for a reduced number. You want it to stay at where it is.
It's almost impossible. It will be very difficult to reduce it. If we say that let's reduce it, I mean the acrimony. So which one will be the lesser evil? Cap it.
Cap it. But the interesting point is the deputy ministers.
Yes.
All will go.
Why?
Regional ministers too, all will go.
Oh. So, to be frank with you, I saw one of that proposal.
Yes.
But I thought it was a typo. No. Deletion of regional ministers. I thought. Okay, so explain to us what's going on. This is so dramatic.
The Constitution is a living document. We are living it. And having lived it so far, we think we can do away with certain positions. Now, you see, Honorable Chairman Sabonsu, when he came and the chairperson gave him the brief of what we have done, he expressed shock. Oh, really? Why? You see, we are coming from a thinking that once political power is achieved, as the chairperson said, winner takes all. Some people say there must be job for the boys. But the point is, do we really need them as a country? We have a slew of civil servants up to chief directors who can equally do the job and sometimes even better. Sometimes ministers, some are very smart, they get there and they land on the job. But most of the work is done by these civil servants. So let's be realistic, come back to the drawing board and say that, look, we don't need all this. Let us have a conversation, bipartisan, and let's move on that way.
I'll tell you this, our viewers are beginning to jubilate over, because what you are actually proposing is further, far-reaching than what we heard Chairman Sabonsu talk about. Yes. People are very interested in the NDPC and the fact that the country doesn't have a standing, development plan. So any political party comes in, they do what they want, they leave what was being done, waste. What's your view on that?
The NDPC, the truth is that if we take the NDPC as it is in the constitution right now, should it stand? My answer is no, absolutely, we don't need it. So if you ask me the composition of the NDPC and the kind of work that it does right now, we are actually better off. It's just throwing good money after bad, because we all agree that when one government leaves, the next government doesn't want to touch anything that the NDPC has done. They've done great work. It's not about the quality of their work, right, but what do political parties do with it? But generally, the people also agree that we do need a body that is able to measure our national situation, capture our national vision, and then at least give out what we need to do. Something, for want of a better word, a plan. We can call it whatever we want, but we need a body that is able to capture our national vision and then be able to measure and tell us in terms of the resources that we have or what. So what we are asking to do is to take another look at the NDPC. So one, we are recommending a recomposition of the NDPC. And the recomposition of the NDPC is to make it more inclusive, to make it more national in character, and to include all the sectors of the Ghanaian society. So it will also have institutional representations. So like the labor unions, for example, academia, expertise from several, including all political parties. Political parties too should have reps on the NDPC. And we are recommending that rather than leave it to an act of parliament as the CRC had proposed, we are saying that when it comes to the political party representation, just set it that any political party that gets more than 5% in national elections is entitled to nominate a person to the...
It doesn't matter if they have representation in parliament.
If they are able to get up to 5% of the national election. The reason why we are not limiting it to parliamentary representation is that if we look at the history of our country, a lot of the time we've had just two political parties in parliament a lot of the time. So to give more opportunity to political parties, to smaller political parties to have representation on the NDPC, we think that if a political party is able to get up to 5%, we leave it to the public. If the public wants to reduce the percentage further or increase the percentage, that is fine. But we are looking to be able to capture as many political parties on it as well. And then it would be their job to now come up with this broad vision or broad framework or broad plan. And it will also be their job to periodically monitor it and give a report to Parliament and, of course, to all of us to tell us where we have reached. This will also provide information for the electorate in the sense that the electorate knows to what extent each political party that has formed government at a particular point in time is able to do. And we want the plan or the broad vision to be binding in such a way that Parliament will, once Parliament approves it, if anybody wants to, even if Parliament wants to take another look at it, you need a certain threshold of votes to be able to look at it. So it should be binding in a nature, and we should have an inclusive body that is able to tell us where our national situation, what our national situation is.
Thank you very much. We are having an interaction with the chairperson of the Constitution Review Consultative Committee set up under this government at the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, which is also using the Constitution Review Commission's document and other proposals that have come since then to seek to further refine the proposals towards a review of the Constitution. And you have heard the far-reaching recommendations that they have, including capping ministers, 25. We thought, okay, we're going to hear your views soon. And Oliver Mame Mensah-Bonsu will share their views on these from where they also sit. We will have John Ewoza, who is member of this committee, to tell us what is it that they want to do about Article 71 office holders. And they seem to be saying the president should pay tax. What is informing that? Hello, John, are you with us?
Hello, I'm here.
Yes. You are the audit man. You would have been doing the numbers as far as accounting processes are concerned. What is it that you are seeking to do with Article 71 office holders and the president, whether or not he should pay tax?
Thank you, and thank you for the viewers. What we are looking at in terms of the Article 71 as a committee is that, one, this issue of the end of service, how do you even call it?
Ex gratia.
Ex gratia.
Ex gratia.
Right.
Yes, that they give it to them. That has become a topic that everybody is discussing. Actually, if you look at it critically, it's the way we compute it. That is why people are talking about it. We have proposed that people come to office at the beginning of the year, for instance, like the parliamentarians, their salaries are not determined from day one, but their salary, they take the salary of the previous MPs. So at the end of their term, they now form a commission or a committee to determine their salary. And that is why the SSs or the arrears are paid with some form of these things. And that form this ex gratia that we always talk about. So we are looking at if salaries will be determined from day one when they assume office, as soon as they are inaugurated as MPs, so that at the end of the day, if something small is given to them, it will not look so big that people may think that, oh, they are taking sums of money home, then that list will also go down a little. So that's what the committee is looking at. Then when it comes to the payment of tax, if you look at our Income Tax Act 2015 at 896, if you go to Section 7, it exempts the president from paying tax on his salaries and allowances. The committee is looking at this situation. We are all talking about revenue. And as a first gentleman of the land, we are proposing that, as is always said, that leader by example, our presidents should pay tax. That is our proposal. So that the market woman that is down there that every day we see the people going there to harass them, pay tax, pay this, they will be motivated that, oh, if our first gentleman on the land is paying tax, then how much more we? So that is the proposal that we are making. And if Ghanaians accept and they approve of it, I think it will go a long way to increase our revenue base. So that the idea that somebody who is earning salary, we are talking of salary, and is not paying tax, will be over. You look at a situation too that people end their, still on the Article 71, whether people should end their tenure and we still have to vote for them. I believe that everybody will take that mantle as the first gentleman already may have a place to live. Why should the state also waste resources to also build another house for the person? And these are some of the things that the committee has proposed. And we believe that at the end of our work, when we bring it before the Ghanaian public, and whatever they also agree, will be cool to go with it. So that is what the committee is saying in the area of taxation for the president.
All right. Thank you very much. I will take a quick break, and then when we return, we'll hear briefly from those who are not members of this committee and who have such experience and expertise in these processes. Hear their views on some of the things that they have seen this committee want to do so far. We will end on the note of how to get there. I think that's the most important question. How to get there. Will their work also not be shelved, as has happened previously? Now, Kwame Esiedu Sapon says, cap ministers are 25. Remove deputy ministers and regional ministers. If the Constitution is reviewed to reflect this as being suggested, Samson, I will begin to take our democracy serious again. Then Kweku Entwibwe Siako says, hooray, I told you, we can do with less than 20 ministers. Here we are. And he shares with me his views that he shared some time ago, making those suggestions. Eraba Bediako says that, I'm enjoying today's program and even tearing. Ghana has to rise up. It will take me and you to make it beautiful, not NDC or NPP. National plan, very important, and I like the way Clara stated it. No party should present manifestos to us. They are full of lies. Okay, so I was going to mention this person's name, but it will not be necessary. It's a significant person in the realm. He says, most deputy ministers are not effectively used or assigned important duties by their substantive ministers. Most deputy CEOs of state institutions are unnecessary, and some hardly do anything. Some state institutions have performed excellently with a single CEO without any deputies. Thank you very much. I've many comments. I'll share them with you when we come back. Anderson says, this is not as dramatic as I sound about it. This is 21st century, optimal use of scarce resources. This is fantastic news that we are being told. Thank you. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. It's brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. And one of their professors is with us, and you are telling us that you just love her courage and boldness and clarity of thought on the issues that she has spoken about so far. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 years. Duraplast, producers of quality PVC and HDPE pipes. And Water Tank, the only water storage tank with a level indicator. Where Duraplast goes, water flows. DBS Industries, roofing, Papa Fie. My Way. Dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex tanks, it's strong, it's tough. Flamingo paints, simply superior. Snit Seed, self-employed enrollment drive. It's your future, so own it. You don't have to be in public employment or some private employment. If you are self-employed, if you are in the market, employing yourself, so to speak, you can put some money aside for when it will be necessary. Hoptel is everything you and Door Masters. Now, before we continue, let me just share these messages with you. Kweku Entwibwe comes back to me, and he shared a document where he proposed that there could be 20 ministers, and you are capping it, and people are so excited, ecstatic about it. So he wants me to share his document with you.
That is absolutely welcome. So anybody who submits, yes, very, very welcome. So we take, of course, we don't believe that we don't have all the knowledge in the world. So we are specifically doing this because we want people to share their views and their opinions with us. And it's a national affair. So everybody who is interested in our nation and has views to share can share their views, including documents. Once we will take the document from you, and we are very grateful, Entwi Bosiako. We are very grateful that you are sharing your ideas with us.
So Kweku, I understand you can share it through Current Constitution Review GH@gmail.com.
Or even send it to Newsfile.
Okay. Current Constitution Review GH, one word, current constitution, not constitutional, constitution review gh@gmail.com, and they will take it. Angela Jamnabwaji says, great news from the members of the committee. Raise hope. The icing on the cake will be how do they envisage that their proposals will be accepted. What's the plan? And that's what I say we are reserving for the last. John Hall says the CRCC recommendations are excellent. Please, what are their positions on the following? With the capping of ministers to 25, I hope they will not be selected from Parliament. Okay, the voting of MMDCEs, the president should only appoint the boards of SOEs, and the board should appoint its CEO. Do you share that view? That's what is being suggested. Alhaj Suleiman says, wow, I'm really excited to hear these far-reaching reforms. Samson, in my conversation with you last time, I mentioned the cost of governance and organizations of our public institutions as one of the biggest challenges we have as a country. About 73% of tax revenue go into emoluments as a result of the elephant size of governance architecture. If reduced, as being proposed by the CRCC, governance will be less costly and there will be fiscal space for doing many good things for our citizens. Okay, I'll just read maybe two more and then I'll bring in Mame and Oliver. This one says, Yakubu Ibn Chambers, I have not been presented with the opportunity to put in my post recommendations on the outcome of the CRCC, this is not CRC, CRCC's work. I humbly suggest a cutting down and capping of everything in the Constitution. All right, so send your views to current constitution review gh@gmail.com. As we understand, there's a time coming that they will come to the public. They are not at that point yet. The last one says, I'm following the arguments on Newsfile on the work of the CRCC. Kudos to Madam Clara and her team. Thank you, Samson, for producing good content to your viewers and listeners on a weekly basis. Thank you very much. That's all we are here to do for you. This is coming from Sadiq. I'll end the messages here. They are just coming in so thick and fast. Okay. So, yes, let me start with you, Mami. What you are hearing and what's your assessment of this committee and what they are doing? Are they on the right path? Are there some things they are looking at that you would wish can be looked at differently, particularly from your expertise as a constitutional theorist?
Thank you, Samson. Before I address your question, can I take a minute to make some preliminary comments?
Please go ahead.
The first, I would like to very respectfully respond to Senior Forson on the idea of a failing democracy. The comment he made about the democracy is not failing, we are failing as the people. We are the demos of the democracy. A democracy is nothing without its demos. So it is not possible for the demos to fail and the democracy to be doing well. So if we accept that the demos is failing, then we must accept that the democracy is failing. I have no desire to live under a monarch or a dictator. So I do not have any, I will never be caught advocating any other method. But it doesn't mean that what we have right now is not failing. What it is we must talk about what we have and assess whether it is sufficient and what we need to do to fix it. It may be that it is only failing because of the demos, but if that is the case, then it is failing and we must talk about it. The second preliminary comment I'd like to make is about the idea of log rolling, which Clara commented on. And I'm very glad to hear the CRCC is opposed to it. So log rolling is when they present a bundle of terms to you and you have to vote yes or no. I have a simple explanation for the people why this is bad and why we must, under our Article 41 obligation, resist every effort to have a log rolling referendum. I want you to think, is anybody listening to your show who who would answer yes or no to this question. Would you like a Rolex, a Ferrari, a pile of cow dung, and a burger? Who can answer this question as a yes and no? And so we must resist every effort to bundle provisions when we do a referendum on a constitutional review. And then finally, I want to comment on the idea that some of the CRC recommendations have been overtaken by time. It's only been a decade. If a constitution is going to live, it must live long enough to shape its people. So if there are recommendations that a decade later are no longer viable, it means they weren't thought through well. So I would echo a word of caution to the CRCC to ensure that their recommendations don't suffer such a fate. 10 years is a very short time for a recommendation not to be viable at a constitutional level. That said, I have read the preliminary document that they sent out, and I have to say, between the document and the committee members' submissions, I'm quite inspired that this report will bring some really good material out that could help us streamline and improve the Constitution. I'd like to make a few really quick comments about specific things. The first is the NDPC, and I was very glad to hear Clara say she thinks what we have right now is absolutely unnecessary. I go further. I don't think NDPCs are necessary at all. A constitution, I'd like us to think of a constitution as a story build, a legal order as a story building, and the Constitution as its foundation, and all the other laws as different levels and pillars. You have to be careful how frequently you touch your foundation, or your whole building will come falling down. So a constitution must change, but none too easily. So we should be careful about it being a living document and requiring change. It is a foundation. It must stay solid and stable.
And both of them in the studio here are nodding in agreement to the statement you just made. I'm
glad to hear that. So my problem with NDPCs is that we have agreed on a system where the people will come to us and tell us how they plan to make our lives better. And then based on what they tell us, we make a choice. That's what the democracy is. An NDPC is a third group that is going to determine, based on whatever factors, I'm not even going to exclude the possibility that they are better at it than the general populace would be. But there's no point in elections if we have a plan and we just need people to come and implement the plan. There's no point in it. I think self-government is a continuing responsibility. If governments come and abandon projects and go and another person comes, that's where the people's job in the democracy comes in. What are we basing our electoral choices on? So an NDPC will not save us. It will be another one of the many secretariats that we set up. But you can't solve any country's problems by secretariats. So we have to, at some point, take responsibility for the development trajectory of the country and let the people actually do their job as the people. So I was glad to hear that Clara didn't think that the current NDPC is necessary, but I don't think an NDPC is necessary at all. I think the people must grow up and do our job. On the Independent Emoluments Committee, I was so happy to hear the CRC's view that we don't need another secretariat, and I think they have come up with a great method for keeping it effective. My only question is, I'm not so sure that our public officers are entitled to an automatic review of their salaries in a country where we don't have an automatic review of our salaries. So I'm not so sure that an Emoluments Committee is required at all. Because I don't know that, I think it is a bad strategy to insulate your leaders from the experience of its citizens, because then our problems don't become your problems. So while I am very happy with the formula idea, I think we should really consider how we remunerate our public officers.
Right.
The executive of the places where the committee has done some really great work. I almost danced in joy when I saw the abolished regional and deputy ministers. I have long wondered what regional ministers do, why we have them. And I think removing the majority from parliament is a great way of separating the institutions and allowing parliament to do its job in a presidential system, which is to buy friction with the executive, check the executive. Again, on the president not paying tax, I saw a report once, I think it was an Emoluments Commission report, that said he was a guest of the state. And I was so offended. The first gentleman is a guest. Who is the citizen? Who's the householder? Whose house is it? The first gentleman is a guest? Who lives here? So I was very happy to hear them recommending that the president should pay tax.
Right. And just this bit about something they had on chiefs and their jurisdiction, right? And I thought that for someone like you, having looking at your work, the customary law and the 1992 Constitution of Ghana, a comparative theoretical study. And I said, you'll be the best person to share a view on what they seek to do with the chiefs.
I actually did not, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the slide now.
Just hold on. Just hold on. What was your intention, or what is your plan with the jurisdiction, so-called, of whatever?
We're hoping that this would be on the chiefs would be for the next segment, because it's a bit of information so that people can take their time and then listen to it and give us their feedback.
Can we just get a sneak peek for now? Because we can't guarantee that we can get Mami the next time.
The sneak peek is that you know that the houses of chiefs deal with certain disputes. So what we are recommending is to add retired justices to their judicial panel to assist, because currently, of course, a lot of the issues that go there, even for customary law, as the name suggests, customary law is law. So we thought at least some of the retired justices could be part of the committee in the houses of chiefs, whether national, regional, and to help resolve disputes at the House of Chiefs.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, did you hear her?
I did.
Okay.
And I thought that was a good recommendation, because one of the concerns I've had with the House of Chiefs and its judicial committee is that as a body made up of different chiefs, if you think about it, it means that there is disputes of, let's pick a constituency, a chieftaincy. Let's say that the Gonja traditional entity headed by the Yagbonra. Say there's a dispute in that entity, and the National House of Chiefs is adjudicating that. We basically have a system where several non-members of that entity are deciding finally the customary law of that entity. And it is not necessarily problematic, because we are trying to bring all these different entities into a single people under the Constitution. But it would be very helpful if a justice of the Supreme Court, who is well versed in the methodology of the state, the principles of the state, and as I have argued many times, the nation state operates very differently from the traditional state. And so if the traditional state, if there are disputes under the traditional state are going to be resolved by a mechanism created by the nation state, it should have some way of ensuring that there's an alignment between both methodologies and aspirations and objectives. And I think a retired Supreme Court judge might be very helpful in ensuring that a customary law forum made up essentially of foreigners to the particular customary body that is being affected is at least being brought in line with the Constitution's method.
Thank you very much. John Osai Kwapong, Dr. John Osai Kwapong of the CDD says, I agree in principle that a constitution needs review every so often. Many lawyers don't share this view because we look at the American Constitution and others. But I often argue that constitutions need agency, individuals who make it come alive. Okay, that's Mame that I'm reading under there. Individuals who make it come alive. And until we have agents who are committed to making the Constitution come alive in positive ways, the cynic in me says no amount of constitutional review will produce the outcome we deserve. The key task is how do you incentivize the agents so their better angels prevail most of the time. And here too, I hear Isankoma. Yes, Oliver, what's your feedback? Perhaps, let's say, critique of what you have heard or read the CRCC propose to do. I think Oliver's mic is muted.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Great, you are back.
I was saying that I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation and also the different views and perspectives that are shared. One of the things that I want to outline from the very go is that different strands of our society have different views in what direction we need to take a constitutional reform project towards. And those views are all valid. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to refrain from speaking directly to whether or not I agree with substantive proposals because they have certain views, but from a position or from the point of view of a constitution maker, talk about some of the things that they have to look out for as we are going to bring this into the general body of public discourse and how we're going to discuss them. I'm going to mention 5 points that I think are critical to the conversation. Before I do that, I want to first acknowledge, I haven't heard mention, Ivio Dankwa, who led a Constitution Review Implementation Committee, which came right after the Constitution Review Commission, that they have done some work, particularly in terms of drafting the articles and providing a framework for implementing the recommendations. I know that KY Amwakun with Assets and I have worked tremendously and others as well towards this process, which has culminated in what the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs is housing. And I know that he has provided great leadership through the compact process and that are key partners of this journey. The 5 points I want to make, and I think that they need to account for, is 1, questions around internal consistency. And internal consistency of the proposals and also the reasoning behind them. So for instance, I hear a suggestion that is going to be sort of application of formula, for instance. The formula comes in terms of the choice of 25 ministers. So the thinking shouldn't just be about, well, we have 25, but what fed into the 25? And why did we settle on 25? Secondly, around Parliament, for instance, in terms of representation in Ghana and across the world, the number of MP to population, we have one of the lowest across the world. We have 102, roughly, if you take our population to be 31 million, so to round it off, we have about 112,000 people to 1 MP. It is one of the lowest in the entire world. I think India is around 400,000, the US is around 350,000 and others. The only one that surpasses us is maybe the UK with 650 ministers, which brings them to an average of 110,000. My thinking is that it is going to be formula that we don't just say, we have gone and say, well, we have 275, and so they're going to plan to create 2 new more, so let's cap it at 277. It doesn't demonstrate something that is well thought through. And I think that's some of the things that Mami was talking about, that it shouldn't be overrun by time. If we went from the approach and said that we want for every 250,000 Ghanaians to be represented by 1 MP, it will bring the current composition of Parliament down to 124. And we know that every time we gain we get 1 million Ghanaians, we gain 4 new MPs. In the popular mind, we have created some equity around the number of people that ought to be represented in our Parliament and who is speaking for them. That way, it is the factors of determining how we review the membership of Parliament that sustains for a longer period of time. So that in 25 years' time, when we have 500 million Ghanaians, or that something has changed around the composition of Ghana, the questions of representation are not answered by our constitution. It's kind of how I think about it. The question around formula for the Independent Emoluments Committee as their suggestion, the questions around equity of the Article 71 framework isn't responded to and answered by formula only. And I think that some of the questions around the fact that we have a Chief Justice who said they were sending text messages to people within the presidency to release funding that is to the judiciary, it's one of the things that fed into this idea of independence around emoluments generally. And those questions ought to be answered even if formula doesn't do it for you. The questions around the equity, I think Mami also mentioned about this idea of insulating a certain class of people from the economic realities of the society can create a dysfunction and can undermine faith in them. And so that if we have a process whereby we all are subject to single spine, everybody knows that we are all feeling the burn. And that is important in order to manage how society views those who lead them. So those are some of the questions of internal consistency I also want to address. Perhaps there's also one issue even around that on the proposals around the Judicial Committee of the National House of Chiefs. The proposal, as I understand it, is that you have to have a legal mind, a judge, who forms there. The proposal to have a retired judge of the Superior Court is one I have a problem with. The Constitution in its explicitly says that persons who have reached a certain age cannot serve within the regular judiciary. Then we say that as old as they are, and the Constitution determines that they should be retired, we should make them members of the Judicial Committee. We haven't achieved necessarily the objective of having legal minds. It can be persons who are nominated there, but who are also considered as part of the Superior Court, and doesn't unlimited by their retirement. So the retirement limitation, I don't really fully understand. But again,
in America, they serve a life term.
The second point I want to make.
In America, they serve a life term, right?
Pardon?
In America, they serve a life term.
Yes. In America, they serve a life term. If you're proposing a life term, then it has to, again, internally consistent with the way we view it.
Okay.
Even in fact, on the internal consistency, I noticed that they cap ministers, they cap parliament, but say they are not going to propose a cap for the judiciary. In fact, they are recommending divisions of the Supreme Court to replicate the High Court. The High Court has 8 divisions. 8 divisions, if you have a panel of 5 per each, which the Supreme Court requires, that's a minimum of 40 members of the Supreme Court. Again, these are questions that you need to be able to continue to reason through because they're going to come up when you come to the public. The second thing is the risk factors. When you cap ministers at 25, trust me, we are going to have, for each minister, 15 special advisors. You have to think through how do you tie the hands of the political class. You need to know the beast you're dealing with. If not, you'll be overrun by the way in which the system operates. And I understand that there's difficulties here because it's a committee that is working part-time. And they don't have a research team that is looking at what are the risk factors of every proposal. That is key before you send out a proposal, I think. Unless we can think around the framework of how we tie those in, we're going to create a problem in the long run. The other thing is around the president's appointing powers and we say ministers. Okay. One of the bigger challenges we have consistently is that if Chairman, for instance, is talking about the president appointing 6,000 people, which is a problem, the president's appointing of ministers of all these people does not evolve from the Constitution alone. There are less than 1,000 people appointed by the president directly under the Constitution. The vast majority, it is Parliament which is enlarging the powers of the president through these appointing mechanisms. You have to directly limit what Parliament does in expanding executive and appointing powers of the president. If you don't do that, we are going to move it from ministers and increase appointment on another end. The third thing is about procedure and methodology. So when you say, for instance, that you're going to do consultations, in order to build trust, the people need to be clear. Our consultations need to play within the framework of what you have chosen, or we can go beyond? And if our consultations change what you have recommended, what are you going to do about it? If you don't answer this question seriously, people are not going to trust that that consultative process is going to contribute to anything meaningful because you're coming to them with a mind made up. The third thing is about the process of prioritization of the issues. So I'm going to look at some of them. And when you remember, for instance, the Constitution Review Commission made 478 recommendations. Not all of them were constitutional. 264 were constitutional. There's a sense of prioritization that is coming up here. That they're not going to be that expansive and holistic in the review. But the process by which you go and choose what you're giving priority to, it's important. I know, for instance, that one of the recommendations is that the quorum of Parliament ought to change. And instead of saying, apart from the person presiding, all members of Parliament should form, 1/3 should form the quorum. We should change that to our quorum should be 1/3 of all the members of Parliament. I think that because we are going to be focusing on prioritization, this issue has already been dealt with in Justice Abdul line. There's no controversy around them. Focus the time then on the big ticket issues so that it doesn't look like you're doing peripheral changing of language and tweaking here and there, and that doesn't really get to the substance of what the broad society is asking for.
All right.
So that's the fourth one there. And the last one is about the political process. So in general trust in the process and what they're trying to do, people are going to be asking, like you have started, is this going to end up somewhere? We are going into election year. The election priorities would overrun, and it's likely to overrun, recommendations and a political project of drawing people towards a referendum. And if after that, what happens? If you're going to tell the next government that reduce ministers to 25, it sounds like the situation where we've known in a political situation where people feel like proposals made in the final year where we have a lame duck president are intended to bind the executive, the next executive. And that can be a process that undermines commitment of all the political actors in the process. So those will be my 5 pointers.
Thank you very much. And we're going to plead with all of you that you make a commitment that we have taken just how many of the issues so that we have another opportunity to look at the rest of the other issues in a manner that the committees work. They are working with the public, giving them feedback constantly so that by the time they are coming for the public consultations, they have good feedback and know how to proceed with it. So we'll beg of you to make a commitment with us on Newsfile that the next time we can have all of you back. Now, the critical issue that is coming up, and I know maybe you will say we should be discussing this in the next time, but Prince Augustine Anto says, government white paper is laughing in the corner. Do you understand what he means?
Yes. Before I take that, let me answer to the issue of the jurisdiction of the House of Chiefs and the fact of retired justices. Sometimes we think that we need to be practical as to the context of our situation and, of course, our cultural values as well. We all know that retired Supreme Court judges definitely are of a certain age, so they would have been 70 and above. We know what age does, particularly if you are dealing with an institution like the National House of Chiefs. That is one. That's two.
So some level of respect.
Some level of respect. Okay. Two, the point that Mami raised, the experience and expertise that a retired Supreme Court judge, for example, would be bringing to help to harmonize our cultural laws and values in line with our Constitution. We don't want to go into sometimes the direct complexities and sometimes inefficiencies, particularly when it comes to land, the cultural issues, state law. So at least this helps us in a way to be able to streamline issues. That's one. And two, the retired Supreme Court judge, for example, is not looking for promotion. I mean, this is somebody who has served. They are not looking for promotion, so they have time to be able to bring their expertise, and of course, they are going to be part of the committee. So these are some of the things that informed the choice of a retired Superior Court judge. And also, we have a research team. So in due course, we would be making available who our research team are.
All right.
Yes.
So I was asking that question. Maybe Tony would like to attempt that. People are looking at the end from the beginning. That you may do a very fantastic job. And since you started giving us the broad strokes of the critical areas requiring review, on social media, on all our handles, people are just ecstatic. And even the quality of the people who are sending us messages, it tells you that they're happy about this, but all of them are sounding one thing. How will it end?
Well, by the nature of our training, all three of us, by the nature of our training, we all don't speculate. But we look at what has been as precedent and try to gauge what will happen or what should happen. I believe that both the president and the leader of the opposition, and even my good friend Mr. Alan Shremating, have all indicated that there's the need for us to improve the system. The president, in the skits that you played, has shown his commitment, and even by the setting up of this committee, has shown his commitment. The question is whether or not our recommendations will be accepted. So long as there's this bipartisan approach and a national as the president will say, there's a national movement towards the views which will be encapsulated in our report, I believe that we'll all be bound somehow to accept it. Yes, the person who is cynical saying that government white paper is lurking in the corner. Yes, he has the right to have that cynical beliefs. But I believe that because of the broad nature of the consultation and the documents and the history that we've gone through, by the time we finish, I think there will be no doubt that that is the way we should go. And from the text messages that you are receiving, you see that there's a general belief that that is the way we should go. And I have no doubt that the good Lord will smile on all of us for us to accept that that is the way the country needs to go.
Thank you very much. We've just run out of time, so maybe the chairperson will have the last word. How are you doing this?
What for God and country? That's
For God and country.
For God and country, we do the best that we can. We invite everyone else to join us in doing the best that we can because this is our country. We want the best for it because it's where we intend to live and enjoy our lives. So we want to create a country that we all want. So
no, I'm looking at lawyers and their precious dollar hours, and when they are looking at the time, they are looking at the money. And this is sacrificial work.
We haven't been paid a dime for all the work we've done so far. So this is not about.
For how long now?
Since was it since May or April?
Yeah, April.
Since April.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. But
Okay.
we keep going. So
Right.
in fact, because of that, I should actually say that I really, really want to thank the committee for the members for the dedication. I have been inspired by all the members. As you can see, the membership on the board, look at the caliber of people, look at even if you're looking at age, just look at the people, and all of these people have been so committed anytime we've had meetings to find the time, including research, to come and do this work for God and country. We are so grateful. Our research team has also been working tirelessly to get information, put together documentation that we need. So we are thankful to all of that, and certainly to the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs for all of the assistance that we've been getting to do this work so far.
Thank you very, very much. And
Thank you, Samson, for bringing me out of
Yes.
my home.
Certainly.
It is only me and Clara who can bring you to television at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for honoring our invitation and being
My
here.
Takrady people are very happy to see me again because they've not
Right.
seen me in over a year.
Right.
I'm
And
still
you
alive.
remember when Tony Forsing used to be the PR for the Ghana Bar Association? They were often taking on issues frontally in the media as well. So my guests for Newsfile this morning have been Anthony Forsing Jr., former president of the Ghana Bar Association. He's a member of the committee. John Woza is an auditor with the audit service, and he's also a member. Clara Berry Cassity is a law lecturer, University of Ghana. She's on the CDD board as well, and she's chairperson of this committee. Mame Abna Siam Mensa Bonsu is constitutional theorist and associate professor at Ashesi University. Oliver Bakavomawo is researcher and worked with the Constitution Review Commission and is a reform advocate. He and his Democracy Hub and the Fix the Country have been campaigning for a complete overhaul of the Constitution to begin with. Thank you all so very much. And this has been Newsfile for today. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini. My outfit, as always, is by Habil Scooter. Tomorrow, God willing, 2 p.m., join me on the show that I really love. We are continuing with part 2 of our discussion on OSP can't prosecute influence peddling. It's a question. And my guests are Dr. Justice Shramsai, Petroleum Solicitors and a lecturer at GIMPA, as well as Martin Pebu, GT Legal Africa and rights advocates, activists. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.